I've never seen such an all-star team of idiots band together. Like, Maga, you really pat yourself on the back. You've reached a new level of stupidity. You got Marjorie, Mr. Ed Taylor Green, that said, I wouldn't have voted for this bill had I seen, I think it was 10 pages in the bill. I would never vote for that. Your one job is to read the fucking bill before you vote on it. Why would you vote on a bill if you didn't fuck around and read it? When that's your one fucking job. That's negligence. Stupidity at its fucking finest. Should be fired. Then you got Marco confused, Sammy Sosa Rubio, right? Your parents was immigrants. You were just pushing a whole different narrative before you were put in the office by Trump. You were being clowned on by Trump. And now you're his little lapdog, a little groupie boy. A groupie bitch, if we really want to be the truth. Right? Then I see guys like this guy, Josh Hawley, right? I think that's his name. Let me see what his name is. Yeah, Josh Hawley. Why do it look like all you motherfuckers are on drugs, on hard drugs at that? It looks like you're making deals with the RX kingpins in Singapore, whatever the fuck got you on losing weight like you do. That don't look like Ozempic. That looks like crack. That looks like fucking meth or perks. I don't know what it is, but the way you talk, I'm guessing it's probably fucking meth. So, there you go. You got meth head Josh Hawley, right? Always raising his voice, talking about a whole lot of fucking nothing. And they got you on camera, starting an insurrection on January 6th, and then running like a little bitch. Running like a little bitch. You ran like a little bitch. When everything started hitting the fan, you ran like a bitch. And then you got people like Squidward, Clarinet, Steve Miller, Mr. I lost my bitch to a motherfucking ketamine Elon, or ketamelon. Bro, I'd be mad too if I looked like you. I would probably shoot myself, to be honest with you. But you project all your hate towards yourself on the world, and I get it. At the end of the day, bro, like I said, if I look like you, I would just hate myself. But I'm a person that takes accountability and wouldn't go ahead and hold that against other people. It's your own fault. You should hate your parents. Your mom should have swallowed you. You should have ended up fucking dying on the bed sheet. You probably look the same, you ugly motherfucker. You lost your wife to another motherfucker that looks like a fucking alien. A ketamine fiend. What'd he do? Fuck around, pop some of that Molly with her and fucked around and said, let's go to my hotel, love. I got way more money than that lame. And I got my hair. I paid for it, but I got more hair. That's why you want all the immigrants gone, huh? Somebody knocked your bitch. Anyway. Then you got Lauren Bobbitt. Come to find out, it took you, 4 or 5 times to get a GED? And you were a victim of domestic violence. I don't want to go ahead and say anything, but at the end of the day, love, you don't seem like that at the end of the day. I don't know how the fuck you got into politics. I would have thought the requirements was a little bit, the qualifications to go ahead and get into the positions that you got into. Now, granted, Monica Lewinsky got up there, so I guess we know how you got up there, too. But at the end of the day, to each his own, love. To each his own. And who else do we got, man? God, so many. Man, Scott Besson, I ain't gonna lie to you, bro. You look like a fucking hitman, bro. You look like a fucking hitman. I'm pretty sure you gave Elon that black eye. I don't think Steve Bannon was lying about that. I think you blacked that motherfucker's eye. Oh, shit. I know Scott's tripping because Scott's like, these motherfuckers is, you guys are fucking on my name. He trying to do anything he can. Now he's trying to go ahead and say, it might just take the president to go ahead and take care of his own fucking problems since he fucked it all up. Let that motherfucker go ahead and be the motherfucking fallback guy. And then you got, what's this boy's name? The alcoholic, the signal chat guy. I can't even remember his fucking name, man. Anyway, we got Signal Chat that likes to expose everything while he drinking down a 40, followed back with a motherfucker swigging that shit down, waking up in the morning with a Patron shot, brushing his teeth with a fucking shot of whiskey. It doesn't get no better than this, bro. Y'all can't make this shit up. Like, this is who you got as your representation. And then you got a motherfucker that's got a worm in his brain making all the decisions. The worm is making the decisions, bro. I don't know if that motherfucker's brain, he done made all kinds of little, like, a maze in that motherfucking brain or whatnot. He go through with little wormholes and all that shit trying to go in and process information. That's why he's slow. He fuck around and go from the back to the go from the whatever what is it called, the back lobe, I guess, to the frontal lobe, whatever the case is. The worm is traveling the information, so it's a little bit slow. His processing speed is back like the 19 when the computers first come out. He's the first motherfucking model of computer. And then of course we got the king of stupid. Mr. I don't know what to do with my hands. He look like he describing a bad bitch with curves every time. Like, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. Oh my god. Y'all really bought into a person that told you to go ahead and shoot yourself up with UV light. Go ahead and fuck around and take a horse pill and follow it down with some UV or bleach. Chase it down with that. Y'all bought into that shit. And then they gonna say, oh, y'all don't care about the kids getting raped, blah, blah, blah. Well, we care more than y'all because, some of us did a little bit of research. And, you can only take it from the horse's mouth if the motherfucker said that Trump was his bestie for 10 years. And we're talking about Epstein. If he said he was his bestie for 10 years, who are we to call him a liar? Why won't they release the tapes and the transcripts? Not that redacted version, the whole version. See, what y'all don't know is Trump was probably doing Diddy shit way before Diddy was doing Diddy shit. That's why they probably liked each other. But in any case, y'all thought a person that bankrupt every single one of his business with the exception of one, which has basically been investigated for years for fraudulent activity. You thought this way I was going to save the country. You thought that Biden raised all the inflation, right? He did all the inflation. It was him. He was bringing the immigrants in. They were raising taxes, blah, blah, blah. But y'all fail to realize that back when COVID happened, number one, when y'all were complaining about the mask and all that bullshit, that happened under Trump. Now, he was trying to go ahead and say, he didn't think it'd be mandatory. He didn't think it should be mandatory. And whether that was right or wrong, I know he's not a doctor. And I damn sure know that he doesn't seem to know how to fucking read. So I don't know that I could go ahead and take his analysis versus a fucking doctor. Virtually most doctors at that. So when you go ahead and go back to COVID, though, when all this shit happened, number one, you were supposed to protect our borders then. You ain't do nothing about COVID for 4 or 5 fucking months. They knew about it in 2019. And what was it, October of 2019? Ain't do shit about it until February or March of 2020. That's when he told you to go ahead and pop that motherfucking horse pill, go swallow it with a little bit of motherfucking bleach. You know what? Maybe go ahead and inject yourself with some UV light. If you figure that out, you can go ahead and win the Nobel Prize. And if you could figure that, I ain't gonna lie, let me know when you go in public. I'll invest in your stock. But in any case, let me get back to the inflation part, right? So when all that happened and the world shuts down and there's no supply being created, but there's still a demand, and you remember how people were already panic buying as far as toilet paper, water, anything toiletries, and they were reselling the shit for, basically double, triple its value, and everything was left off the fucking shelves, right? You remember that? That's all happened under Trump. But in any case, when the supply goes out the window, but the demand is still there, any supply that is left, well, why do you think they were able to go ahead and get double or triple and reselling that water? Because at the end of the fucking day, if you have no supply, but the demand is still there, prices go the fuck up. You have to go ahead and pay a little bit more because I know somebody that'll pay this for it. As a matter of fact, I know somebody that's willing to go ahead and I'll pay what you just offered me, right? So then, what else did they go ahead and do? They pump a bunch of fucking liquidity in the market then, right? They go ahead and give everybody these motherfucking bailout checks. Now, you could blame the Democrats for that, too, because it was their idea. But guess who couldn't wait to push it through and put his name on the check? Donald Trump. So in any case, they pump a bunch of liquidity, and then they give people and corporations the chance to go ahead and do a lot of fraudulent shit with PPE loans. Now, that money had to fuck around, and at some point, it had to fuck around. People are going to have to pay the interest on that dollar, right? That's free fucking money, right? So, Mind you, again, we're at a low supply because the world is shut down. Labor costs way up, right? Because you can't find anybody who wants to work. Materials way the fuck up because the whole world was fucking shut down. So supply costs a little bit fucking more because, again, nobody wants to fucking work and the whole world shut down. So if you pump a bunch of fucking money into the market, and you know a lot of people that took advantage of this PPE shit, buy houses, buy cars, buying all this fucking supply up, did that or did that not fucking around and increase the likeliness of lowering the supply while the demand was still high? And then not to mention, you see the fucking housing bubble, how marked up, right? How was that? Because he decided to go ahead and cut interest rates to damn near fucking zero. So, mind you, at this time, right? This is where it was all funny. It was so funny, though, too, because if I remember correctly, I want to say it was like around, maybe it was May or June of 2020. He sunk the stock market over 60% on most stocks. 60%. Now, it rebounded crazy because, remember, they pumped a bunch of liquidity in this market. And you know who was taking advantage of all that PPE money 10 times more than the average person? These major Wall Street hedge funds. These guys that are accountants. These guys that have forensic auditors on their side. These guys that know how to manipulate the system and never have to go and pay that money back, nor fuck around and get charged like most fucking people did that try to go and take advantage of it illegally, right? So in any case, they bought the market up, including the housing market, because we all saw how that shot up. Again, there's zero interest rates, there's no supply coming in, and they built the fucking housing bubble. So when you say that Joe Biden created the inflation, well, let's go ahead and take it back. When did Donald Trump leave office? After all this shit happened, right? They did the Tenant Act, the Tenant Protection Act, where tenants didn't have to go ahead and pay rent, right? They were giving homeowners deals and breaks on that type of shit, right? Then you had the PPE money. Then you had the whole world shut down because of COVID. And guess who left office when all this shit happened? So when Joe Biden comes in, 2 years later, we start to feel the fucking effects. It fucking finally took its toll. The market had no choice but to fuck around and, number one, become extremely overinflated with the housing market, right? At that point, they realized they have a fucking problem, so now they need to go ahead and raise interest rates, right? Which is cool because initially GDP was raising, so now they just want to get inflation down to 2%, and they were almost at that goal. In any case, it sinks down in 2022, right? We feel the effects, and everybody kind of feels the effects. And I know a lot of people were upset because they started to make it mandatory for federal jobs, only federal jobs and government jobs. Now, some of the jobs decided to go ahead and take it upon themselves to go ahead and make it mandatory to go ahead and get that vaccination, right? But for the most part, as far as federally enforced, it was only federally enforced on federal employees. So I can understand why people would be upset about that. But at the same time, let's go ahead and take a look at it from a bigger picture, right? You had trucks, refrigerated trucks of people dead in these particular trucks from COVID. Now, you could argue, yes, that the hospitals fucked around and probably went ahead and may have, counted particular deaths that had nothing to do with COVID under COVID so they could go ahead and get funding, right? I'm sure every business is going to go ahead and try and do what they can. Same thing with what they'll do with the tariffs right now, where they'll, not necessarily even have the supply with the tariff money on it yet because they went ahead and made sure to buy all that shit up before the tariffs were in place. Well, in 2024, before this guy took presidency, knowing what he's going to do. But they went ahead and raise the rates on you because at the end of the day, look, they got to prepare for the tariffs coming in. You got to go ahead and make money some way. So why not go ahead and make extreme money and charge you the tariff prices now? So in any case, yes, I'm sure hospitals did go ahead and count a few deaths that weren't related to COVID, or more than a few, obviously, to COVID. But in any case, to go ahead and say there was a fake virus and people weren't dying from it, that wouldn't be true because I know a couple of people that passed away. And it was definitely fucking COVID. It was COVID. Now, granted, they had medical conditions. One of them had asthma. Another just, diabetic and older. Right? Now, these are the only two people that I know personally. There was other people that I know people that passed away too. But in any case, if you have that and you're looking at it holistically, as a government, or as a world, or as a job, obviously, there's going to be certain people that did go and get the vaccination, right? Or there's certain people that might have lower immune systems, and therefore the company's got to think about them too. So yes, you might have had to take a vaccination, and yes, there were certain big ass risks to it, which is why I didn't take it. And I don't knock anybody that wouldn't want to take it. At the end of the day, it was pushed out there way too quickly. We don't know what the side effects are going to be because you didn't have multiple years to see what the side effects would be. They had to put it out there in a quick time span, right? So that being said, With all that, and you take this into account, right? When you guys say that Joe Biden influenced inflation, the only thing that would have spiked inflation as far as his side, right, for the most part, is basically the money that was sent to Ukraine. Now, when you look at it from this point, as far as the war, right, we can get into this with Trump too, and I'm going to make this an extremely long video if we do, but in any case, when we look at it from, again, holistically, if your enemy is Russia, and you have a country that is right next door to them, right, and they're willing to go ahead and join NATO, it becomes kind of a positioning thing, right? We want to be able to strike you before you could ever strike us, especially with some of the things that they have with the hypersonic missiles and the nuclear capabilities, right? So it would make sense for us to go ahead and say, you know what? Number one, it's not right what Russia's doing. We're obviously trying to go ahead and hold up our name and our brand to go ahead and be the protector and hold up NATO and basically protect these countries and make sure that the world is on, we're all in agreement that this is wrong. And so we go ahead and donate to them, and you could go and say, yeah, a lot of that money could be used to the U.S., right? But there's a lot of money going to the U.S., and a lot of people don't understand that these drug centers, these well centers, these wellness centers, the things that are being used to help people, the homeless, same thing, they get taken advantage of by the particular companies that are running them, by people that fuck around, a third party and kind of getting these type of things. They find ways to go ahead and manipulate everything, and rather than end up helping people, they'll fucking around and addict them and basically just keep them coming back and tell them to go and find other people to do the same shit to make them rich, and also allow people to get high out their habit and still put some money in their pocket. So there's a lot of fraudulent shit. You just need to kind of read up on that type shit, right? So it's not like we don't give back to the poor. It's not like we don't try and go give back to the people that are suffering drug problems. It's just everything gets taken advantage of because the government doesn't run shit very well, right? So if we went to war, if they were doing what we were doing with Ukraine, I can't knock that, because at the end of the day, if Russia was to go and come on them, what happens to Poland next, right? At the same time, Russia also has ties with Cuba, which was, if you remember the Cuban Missile Crisis back in the day, that was a lot to do with Russia too, right? At the end of the motherfucking day, that all started also because of the Trump policy, because he basically outlawed anybody to travel to Cuba, and again, when we just had basically rebuilt their relations with them. So in any case, they're right at our doorstep. So it would make sense for us to want to be right at their doorstep, right? So if you want to go ahead and say that raised some inflation, yeah, of course. But at the end of the day, realistically, in the 4-year term, if you looked at the stock market, number one, they got the inflation down to almost complete goal. They dodged a complete recession, right, where it was actually going to be a bad recession. You could argue it was a recession necessarily because it had, I want to say, back-to-back negative quarters, or maybe 3, right? But in any case, we rebounded, and he actually had, under Biden, the stock market had its highest gain under any sitting president in any 4-year term. And if you want to battle me on that, or want to go and, say that I'm wrong, please go and look at the S&P. Go and look at NVIDIA. Go and look at the tech stocks that really blew up, and which really blew up because of his CHIP Act. That's the honest truth, right? So the inflation shit is a lot of that shit is false. You guys don't really know what you're fucking talking about. It's amazing how people quickly forget that really what started that shit, right? It's all supply and demand. So in any case, we take it from there, and now let's go to the current times, right? We went from having the best stock market in the last 4 years, pulling ourselves out of any recession, looking GDP strong, right? Looking at the point where we were going to be able to expect cuts this year. Maybe not quite crazy, because they wanted to go ahead and obviously keep it to where they can go and really get this down and try and even out the housing market and other things as well, and still kind of recover from COVID. But in any case, we were going to get cuts. Now we're in a dangerous situation. This is typically when you would have to go ahead and cut because of everything that's going on, but we can't because the inflation is already still high, right? Or at risk of going, I shouldn't say it's already high, it's at risk of going way up to about 5% or 4.75, whatever you want to call it, around that area, maybe even 6% because of the tariffs, right? Not to mention that you fucked up the whole stock market because they're calling him the taco, right? That Trump always chickens out, and at the end of the day, whether it's going to be true or not, the market's in limbo. Don't nobody know really what to go and think. You got a lot of people that are getting short squeezed. You got a lot of people that are holding out, or keeping investment funds, but probably pulling out on the uptrend here rather than keeping it long term. You got a lot of shakiness in the market. The bond market looks like shit, and if the bond market does go ahead and tank for any fucking reason, you can please believe that the interest rates are going to go up further, which will hurt Americans even further. So there's a lot of fucking turmoil going on. So when I look at this motherfucking team of maggots, I just look at you guys, and as far as the people that voted for him, I really got to question you and say, should you even have the right to vote? And it's not to go and say, not everybody should have the right to vote, but if you don't know your actual research, you don't know what you're voting for, you don't look at the actual policies, all this shit was outlined in Project 2025. It was literally outlined that. And I'm not a Democrat, but the people that can see through this motherfucker, including, I guess, the Democrats, we all try to go ahead and tell you this was a piece of shit guy, and he showed you in his first fucking term. Now, when he first got the economy in his first term, that was the best economy any sitting president had ever gotten at that time, prior to this year, right, or prior to this time. Now, the economy is kind of, I guess you could debate that because the stock market was in its best times when we were coming out of, historical inflation, which caught under COVID, right, and under Trump in the first term. But in any case, we were coming out of it. However, obviously the housing market's not what it was. Americans' pockets wasn't what it was, right? The cost of living definitely doesn't keep up with the actual average wage increase, right? So it's a completely different economy. Now you're going to go ahead and see at this point, it's not necessarily booming where the job market it's still strong, but at this point we don't know how long because we don't know what the effects are going to be of his policy yet. We just don't know because he chickens out, then he comes back, then he chickens out, and he comes back. And at some point, these companies are going to have to go ahead and pay those costs on those particular tariffs because they're going to go and run out of supply at one of those times when he's decided not to chicken out. He's going to have to pay those prices. They can't just eat that fucking cost, especially if the tariffs end up fucking around and staying on strong. But in any case, from a business standpoint, you got to think of it like that. They got employees, they got overhead, they got other things they got shareholders, even most importantly. So you have to understand that these companies can't afford to go ahead and just, bite the cost. You lose stockholders at that point. Then you lose capital. Then you also could possibly lose, the demand for quite a few bit of things. You could also lose a lot of supply. The shelves might be empty. And they may do that just to spur the demand so they'll be able to charge you more. So this is all because of President Dum Dum and his whole crew of, just rejects. Just think about that.